Hi there, my name is John Baldwin. I work with the Santa Fe Institute and Portland State University, and I want to have just a few words with you about how to begin to think like a programmer. Now, perhaps this is the first time that you've programmed, or perhaps you've tried it some time in the past and been a bit frustrated with it. Well, there are a few states of mind that are really productive to being successful at programming, and experienced programmers develop these sort of through trial and error. Let's see if it doesn't help to understand at the onset what are the best ways to think about programming. Okay, my first point is that computers are dumb and people are smart. And basically, when you build a program, you're making a list of instructions that tell a computer exactly what to do. Now, the average 5-year-old can understand you better than the computer can. Computers just are not that flexible with making meaning. So when you communicate with a computer, you have to be very, very precise. This places a kind of unusual burden on people who are accustomed to communicating with people. So the first thing that we need to remember is that when we deal with a computer, we need to be very precise. So we have to be prepared to learn how to do that. The computer is going to be unhappy many times when you type the wrong thing, but you have to remember you don't care what the computer thinks because it's only a computer. Mistakes are our friends. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that when we attempt to communicate with a computer, especially early on, there's going to be lots of miscommunication. You're going to say something that you want the computer to do, and it's not going to understand you. Now, these things are often, they feel to you like, oh, I did something wrong. The fact is, you just need to spend some time and learn the right commands, and it's inevitable that you're going to be making lots of experiments, lots of little tries that just don't work out. The more tries you make, the quicker you're going to learn how to be able to communicate with a computer effectively. So you can't hold back and not try just because you think you might get it wrong. You've got to try and try and try. The more things you can try, the faster you're going to learn how to do this. You need to be patient with yourself. Don't be hard on yourself. If you try the same thing 5 times and it still doesn't work, just try something else the 6th time. You also have to remember that there's great value in experimenting. Even if you figure out how to get the computer to do something that you think, perhaps you can still experiment and try to do something else and maybe break it. That every mistake you make teaches you something. Every success you have also teaches you something. Finally, I want to remind you, read the error messages. At first, the messages the NetLogo throws up aren't going to make a whole lot of sense. Eventually, these messages will become important clues as you try to understand how to make your program work. That point is that when you program, it's very important to be curious. Programming is an inherently creative activity. You need to be able to play with commands, you need to be able to explore different approaches to problems, and you need to find different ways to implement the solutions that you think up. Now, as you go through this process, it's going to be very important that you remain in a kind of playful mode with the work that you're doing. Because when you're playful, you're thinking, you don't get so stuck on one particular way of doing it. You're always kind of, hey, I wonder what will happen if I do this. And that is a very productive kind of attitude to have when you're programming. Another point is that as you program, it's very important to know what resources you have. Programming, from one perspective, is a process of getting stuck and finding ways to get unstuck as you solve problems and think about things. The important resources that you're going to be using in NetLogo are the dictionary, which you need to be able to access quickly using the keyboard shortcuts on your thing, which I'll show you later. The models library has lots of sample code that you can use as a kind of examples when you are stuck on how to move to the next step in your model. So familiarize yourself with the models library. The facilitators of this program are resources that you can access, and they can help you. other programmers, both online and your fellow teachers, and eventually your students will be a resource to you. This is very important as you're teaching to understand that there's a kind of camaraderie among programmers where we recognize that we're sort of all in this together. And that's actually a great new model for a way to interact with your students where you're not the one who knows all the answers, but you're actually a fellow programmer struggling to understand how to represent an interesting idea in code. Okay, my next point is that you need to take time with your programming. It's going to take some time, and especially at first as you're just trying to master those first few commands and learning to try to encode your ideas in a way that can work with a computer. And often it takes a while to understand how to scale back our ideas and how to abstract the complexities that we'd like to code down to the relatively simple ideas that we actually can code. Of course, that amount will grow as your skill as a programmer grows, but initially, getting all these things sorted out takes some time. So be patient with yourself and trust that the time that you spend programming will be rewarded, as it eventually will be. And also, if you're one of those people like me who gets very engaged by the programming, remember, there's times to go out and get some exercise too. My little pep talk. As we move forward with programming, let's not forget to remind ourselves and our fellow programmers that we need to keep it light and enjoy the creativity that's an inherent part of programming. That we need to look at our mistakes as opportunities to learn something new, not be embarrassed of mistakes or find any fault with ourselves for doing that inevitable part of learning. As you begin to work with students, you need to remind yourself that what you want to do is model for them the process of programming, the process of getting stuck and getting unstuck and using the resources that are at hand to figure out how to encapsulate or capture an interesting problem in code. And that's really what it's all about. So, well, thanks for spending this time with me, and I look forward to the rest of the course when we will be putting some of these things into practice. Thanks. John Baldwin signing off.